Hey there, rock and roll podcast fans. This is Mike Hoban. Welcome to Rat Tales, the podcast that brings you the music and stories of the Boston rock scene that grew out of the mid-'70s at the Rat and some of the other hellhole joints, each with their own sick charm. Welcome to Rat Tales. Our guest today is Jon Butcher, who first made his name as the founding member, singer, songwriter, and guitarist of the Boston-based rockers Joanna Wild. He then went on to form the Grammy-nominated Jon Butcher Axis, a kick-ass band that put out 5 solid major label albums in the 80s and put him in the MTV rotation. He's also a solo artist, a record producer, has a multimedia production company that produces music scores for HBO and other entities. This summer, he's been doing shows with the Axis Band and Blues Project, and this fall released an album, Gypsy Caravan, with a new band featuring Sal Baglio of Stompers fame and Alan Estes, who many will remember from the Estes Boys from the 70s and maybe the early 80s. Thanks for joining us today, Jon.
Thanks for having me.
So I was almost a little surprised, but the Jon Butcher Axis, you guys played like last week in Fall River at the Narrow Center for the Arts, right?
We only stopped at the end of I don't know. I guess it must have been 84 or 85. We took a hiatus that lasted a couple of decades.
Yeah.
and so, you know, Chris Martin, the bass player, and I have been friends ever since, always. We never stopped. And we just decided, well, let's get together for one show. Of course, it was very successful and everyone had a good time, including us. So we do maybe a small handful of shows every year.
So what we like to do is we like to get the backstory before we get into the Boston band stuff. So
Okay.
we like to just start at the beginning. You and I were talking the other day. So
Yeah.
you're not from here, as people can tell by your great diction. You don't have a shitty Boston accent like me and Lenny. So why don't we get the backstory? It's like, where'd you grow up? I know you were in Philly, then you were in Alaska for a little
Yeah,
while.
Okay. I'll make it brief.
Okay.
I grew up in Pennsylvania and then Alaska because my father worked for the government. And I came back to the East Coast for high school and sort of grew up in a suburb of Philadelphia. And so, my roots are East Coast, PA, and also Fairbanks, Alaska, kind of a mix. I was playing guitar since I was, I don't know, 6 years old. I saw singing cowboys in the movies, like trailers, Roy Rogers and guys who had the girl and the horse, and it looked pretty good to me. And they played guitar. So that's kind of where I started. And then I went through the process that many guys like me went through. You have a high school band, right? And then before you know it, you're going to college. So I'm going to college for the first time. I'm visiting Boston, Massachusetts, and that really took me over. The city took me over. I decided once I got here, I wasn't going to leave.
So you came from Philadelphia and you moved up to Boston and you fell in love with the city, you said. So and that was
Out of high school,
yeah.
I I enrolled in a junior college called Graham Junior College for television production. My mother wanted me to have something to fall back on in case music didn't work out, right?
Smart woman.
Yeah. So I went to this television production school to learn broadcast journalism. And lo and behold, there's Johnny A. He was there for some other reason. I can't remember what course he was involved in.
To meet girls, apparently.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I don't know. Not that school. But we were in Kenmore Square. The college was in Kenmore Square. So both of us were in the middle of Boston at its hub, with the Rat on one side and Lansdowne Street around the corner and the Paradise up the road. And it was an amazing place to go to school. After school, having met musicians, I decided I was going to stay and make Boston my home.
So so you were in college, you were pretty young when you started. So is Joanna Wild the first band that you put together? I mean,
Yeah.
in Boston.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that I organized it as much as we, the four of us, Jeff, Troy Douglas Sutler III, and of course, Derek Blevins, who ended up staying in Axis. We all got together and decided to make a band. And I had done it once before in high school, so I was comfortable with giving it a go. And unbeknownst to me, it got popular.
How did you meet these guys? I just want to back up. Sorry.
I think I met Derek at I went to somebody's gig. I can't remember the name of the band that Derek was in, and I went to see him. August, a band called August with Jamie Pease. And I saw Derek and I thought he was great. And I just told him, if things don't work out, I'd love you to work with me as a drummer. And it worked out. And as far as Jeff Linscott and Doug, I can't remember exactly how we met, but you have to remember that in Boston, there was a close-knit music community, very close-knit. Everybody knew everybody. We hung out in the same places. We saw each other in the same music venues. So it's not that surprising. I met everybody back then. I was living next door to Aerosmith.
In Alston?
Yes. My apartment was next door to theirs when they were starting out. So it was very close, very tight knit. And I think we all met each other.
So I think Joanna Wild, you correct me on the timeline, but I was looking at like some of the first gigs that got posted on this website that I saw.
Yeah.
And I think some of them were like in 75, but you guys were probably playing a little bit before that, because when I saw the one that I saw, you guys were playing. Let me pull down and take a look at it. You were playing in Rhode Island, and I think you were like the opening act for the Guess Who, and Duke and the Drivers were on the venue too. So
Yeah.
was that an early on gig? I mean, what
It must have been. What year does it say the year?
it says 75.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't have known that. I wouldn't have remembered, but I guess so. I guess that was one of our early gigs. We got together, you know, and as I was beginning to tell you, the band got popular. People would come to see us and buy the tickets and follow us around, and so that's how we would end up on bills like that.
Well, yeah, I would say I remember just kind of vaguely, because I'm about the same age as you, but I remember your band. I'm not sure I saw you guys, but I probably did see you guys. But I remember you guys being a kind of a big band then. You were probably one of the more popular bands in Boston at the time.
I think so.
Probably like Thunder Train and you and
right.
a couple of other bands, because I remember Mark Bell talking about you guys.
Well, the Stompers.
I think the Stompers were a little bit later.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So when Joanna Wild was around, and the way
that's right. You're right. I remember now. The Stompers and Axis were sort of playing around the same areas and same places. So Joanna Wild obviously predated that, and geez, there's probably a lot of stuff I've forgotten, to be honest.
I'll try. So I'd ask you to describe your sound. So I listened to a couple of YouTube, like full concerts of Joanna Wild. I didn't listen to the whole concert, but I listened to like excerpts, and it's little Aerosmith, Stones, or even a little Kiss sound, even though, you know, those guys were your contemporaries. But
I would say hard rock.
Yep. Hard rock.
You know, I think, you know, before there was metal, there was hard rock, and a lot of bands fit that Humble Pie.
Yep. I love Humble Pie.
Me too. And so did Joanna Wild. And so you know, we emulated them a lot. And of course, I always loved Jimi Hendrix. Yep. And so, you know, combine that and Cream and Johnny Winter, shake it up, and you had Axis.
Yep. So, but on the Joanna Wild. Yep. So the thing that I wanted to say, I was looking at the photos. It's like 4 good-looking dudes playing party rock, and I'm just thinking, like, geez, I can see what I mean. Plus, I listened. The music was really that was a good band. That was a very good band.
I thought so. Yeah.
Did you guys go ahead?
I thought so, and like I said, based on the band's popularity, I think other people did too.
I mean, so I saw a list of people that you opened or played with. You guess, did you go on tour with Sly Stone?
Jeez, I don't remember that.
That was that again. The internet is always said Kiss, Average White Band, but I wonder if they.
No, we weren't on tour with them. These are bands we opened up for.
That's what I mean. Oh, okay. You opened up in Boston. Okay.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So when they came to town,
and needed a local opener who could sell some tickets, we got the gig. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So it's Sly Stone, Kiss, Average White Band. That's a pretty broad range of musical styles.
Back then, if you remember, there was not the kind of separation and compartmentalization that there is now.
Yep.
You could see us in front of Sly Stone, or you could see a hard rock band and a blues band and a pop band on the same bill. It wasn't the same kind of compartmentalization.
Okay. So I wanted to talk about some of the songs, and we like to do it so we can lead in. And the bit that I was listening to, obviously, Suzanne was a big song for you guys. It got airplay on WBCN, and you know. actually liked a lot of the other material better. And there was a song that I was listening to called Let's Be Crazy. Another one was Down on Love, and that was another great song.
As you're saying these things, I'm flooded with memories. I had forgotten all of this. You know, the thing about being an artist, if you never stop, your life is a continuum. You don't see it in chapters. It's all, you know, so I had forgotten a lot of this music. Yeah, Suzanne was great. It was a hard rock, and it was easy to understand on the radio.
Yep.
And we got, you know, we got friends. We became friends with some of the guys at WBCN and WCOZ and geez, that's quite an elixir for a young musician starting out.
Oh yeah. And like I said, you guys got to play some pretty heavyweight bands too.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to talk about, and you kind of, so it's inevitable that it comes up, and it's like you can't get away from it. And we have to address the Jimi Hendrix thing once and for all. So there's a quote from you, I think it's just on Wikipedia, but it says, outside of the surface aspect, this is you, I don't think there was much about me that was Jimi Hendrix like, if you disregard the fact that I'm black and play a Strat. But everything I read is like mentions they always put the Hendrix thing in there, and you know, you did call your band Axis, so no, I want to hear it from you.
This is how I respond to that.
Okay, good.
When I was first starting out, it was important for me to separate myself from one of the greatest living guitar players in history, right? It was important for me to kind of carve out my own niche. But as time goes on, you realize that becomes less important. More important is making music that you like, and that other people like. So, you know, I said that at the beginning because that was my focus then. But now looking back, you know, 35 years, I realized that I shared a lot in common with Jimmy. One thing is the love of the blues.
Yep.
There is a blues element to all of my songs, and there always has been. And it was only my youthful ignorance that kept me from embracing those comparisons instead of trying to distance myself from them. That's just youth, man. Not understanding that. There's one other element too. Let's be honest with ourselves and say that it is obvious that I'm a person of color. It is obvious that I play guitar in some of the ways that Jimmy did when he was living. And so I don't run away from that now. I don't run away from those comparisons. I understand them better than I ever have because I'm older. You know, I have a certain amount of wisdom and hopefully, and some understanding about the world and my place in it. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. And the other thing I was thinking, when I was thinking about the comparison, it's like you and Hendrix are both blues based, but then you took that blues based. I mean, you don't sound like Albert King, you don't sound like BB,
No.
you don't sound like any of the old
No.
blues players. You guys took it in a different direction with a blues bass, is how I was thinking of it.
I think that's how I think of it.
Yep.
You know,
It's like the Stones did too, you know. So, you know, Aerosmith are all, you know, a lot of my favorite bands from that era.
Steven Tyler, I remember in the early days would get compared to Mick Jagger.
Yep.
Now, it was important for Steve to carve out his own niche. He did that arguably in various ways. And now when people make those comparisons, they don't have the same kind of gravitas. They don't have the same, because Steven Tyler is now himself. And I understand exactly how that works. When you start out, you want to be recognized for who you are. Of course, who you are is fluid. It's growing, it's changing. You become who you are.
Yep.
You don't get born that way, right? So that's how I relate now to Hendrix and people drawing comparisons and that sort of thing. It's part of my history.
Yep.
And was part of my pathway, and I'm proud of it.
Yep. You're a better singer than him too. So, one of the things this one I wanted to bring up too. It's like I want to touch on is how, as a Black musician, even like a wildly popular one, like when Joanna Wild was rising, it was just about the time that busing started, though. And was that ever, you know, being a man of color, fronting a rock and roll band, and, you know, at that time very traditionally white, and it's like, or at that point it had evolved into like a real white thing. Was that ever an issue in a city that like never thought of itself as racist, but we certainly figured that out after it blew up? Was that ever an issue?
I would say it this way. The only time in my life that kind of negativity was brought to my doorstep, I played an outdoor gig. I can't remember where it was, with Johanna Wild, and I was walking through the crowd after to go to the trailer or wherever. And somebody hit me in the back of the head with a bottle. And that's the only time. I say that because it's the exception.
Yep.
The rest of my experience, somehow, I think I was viewed as different. And that difference was good and not bad. So I never ran into racism at my shows, ever. I never ran into prejudice or any of those other dynamics that were at play in Boston. It was almost like I had some kind of immunity. Now, it wasn't absolute. You know, subtle racism is a funny thing.
Yep.
Sometimes you don't have to get hit in the back of the head with a bottle to feel it. But I can't say that my coming up in Boston was ever a color issue for me. I don't think ever.
I had zero idea how you were going to respond. So because I sort of had that, like, as a rock musician, it's a different vibe.
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, in the group of people I was with, they were players like I was.
Yep.
And I could play a little bit. So
Yeah,
that's how I was seen. I was the guy who could come in and play a little bit.
Yeah.
And as far as the fans, all that stuff with the busing was raging. And we were selling tickets to mostly white kids.
Yep.
Mostly. Not all, but mostly. And I think I was seen as somehow different.
Yep.
And again, that dynamic, the dynamic of separation and prejudice, that awareness came to me later in other ways, but not in Johanna Wild and not at the beginning.
Well, well, that's a good thing because I literally had no idea how that question was going to go.
Oh,
So
that's how it was.
yeah, that's really encouraging. Um, so Joanna Wild's doing well. You guys are super popular. You're playing around. You open up for all kinds of bands. You guys never got a deal though, did you?
No, we were on the verge a couple of times of getting signed by Epic at one time, and I think it was Atlantic. They came to see the band, and at that time, we didn't know a lot. We didn't know about the business, and I'm not sure we understood at that time about giving up songwriting, your songwriting rights, and all of those aspects. And I think that's why the band never got a record deal, because we weren't prepared to give it away.
Yep.
We felt like, well, geez, there's a line around the block of people who want to buy our ticket. Let's just do that some more.
Yep.
And let the business catch up to us. Of course, the band broke up, before that happened, and evolved into Axis, and that's another story.
Yeah, it's funny. There was back in the day in the 70s, there was a lot of bands. I would say the Neighborhoods, Thunder Train never cut the record they should have. They just took a demo and put it out as their. It's really raw and it's all over the place, and the production is crappy, but it sounds like them. But it's a shame. Like Johanna Wild, thank God for YouTube. You can still find stuff by you guys, and if you're listening, I would highly recommend it.
I will say this: the recording that was playing on BCN, Suzanne.
Yep.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Even now.
Yep.
That is kick ass. Yeah. And maybe I figure we just got lucky. Yeah. Nobody got in the way of it in the studio, and nobody interfered. And so we just went in with youthful exuberance and recorded the darn thing, and it turned out great.
Yeah. And the live sound, I mean, like I said, I just want to reiterate to people out there, go back and listen to some of the Johanna Wild stuff you can find on YouTube. They're a great party band. They've got great guitar work. John's singing is really good. It's just, it's a nice slice of the Boston. You want to see what the Boston rock scene sounded like? That wasn't punk. That was just straight up hard rock. It's great rock and roll. So you guys end up breaking up. No animosity, just it was time. Is that the?
Yeah, that's how bands break up. Yeah. There's a freshness date that's pre-written on every band that was ever together.
Yeah.
And you don't know what the date is. You can't find the label, but it says right there in the label, this band's got 2.5 years. This band's got 4 years. So we had reached our freshness date. It was at the time that we broke up, we were probably all thinking, well, I'd like to try something different. And of course I wanted to do something myself that involved a trio, and that's how it happens.
And you struck gold too, you and Derek.
Yeah.
So why don't we talk about that? How did that, Johanna Wild ends, and then how soon do you start putting Axis together?
It wasn't like that. It was more like I was Johanna Wild ended, and I started jamming with different people, this drummer here and that bass player there, and this guitar player, there is a process of just sort of seeing what's out there. There's a guitar player by the name of Cliff Goodwin.
Yep.
He of course went on to join Joe Cocker's band, but at the time he and I were at the formation of Axis. Axis was originally going to be 2 guitars, bass and drums, a quartet, like Johanna Wild was. And Cliff was fantastic, great player, great guy, and he could sing. But he was just starting to tour with Joe Cocker, right? So I can't remember the exact circumstances, but a Cocker tour came up. And of course, Cliff had to go on it. I mean, who wouldn't?
Oh, God, yeah.
And that's kind of how Axis became a trio by default.
So who are the other guys? And I would say of you and Derek, and then who's the bass player?
Dr. Chris Martin. I say doctor because he left the band and went to Harvard Medical School and never looked back. Now he has his practice in Pennsylvania. Chris and I have been together since the very beginning of the band, the way I see the band as a trio. You know, once I had decided it was going to be a 3-piece, Chris Martin and I were there from the bitter beginning to the ugly end. And I can't say enough good things about both Derek and Chris. They're wonderful guys, terrific players, and great people to know.
Cool. So did you get hooked up? You said that part of the process for you was starting to just play with a lot of people. Did you get to know, like, I can only go by what I read online, and it's so you become friends with Peter Wolf. Is that how because I know you ended up on tour with those guys, or no, I don't know if you went on tour with them or if you just
no, what
opened
happened
up
was that was a tour. Axis got called to do the Freeze Frame tour. Freeze Frame was their biggest record.
Yep.
So they were playing huge stadiums and gardens, the Boston Garden and every other garden around the country.
Madison Square, yeah.
And we were, because of Johanna Wild, I had some popularity in the city, which then went to another level. We were hot. And we got the call. Chris and I were living in a horrible apartment in Cambridge, terrible and cold. It was winter. We're freezing, and we got the phone rang. Literally, the phone rang, and it was somebody from there. It was the guy that was managing us at the time. And he said, "Do you want to open up for the Giles Band for New Year's Eve at the Boston Garden?" I didn't even check my schedule. I just
why would you?
I just said, yeah, we do.
If you were getting married that day, you would have said yes.
Yeah, man. So there's Chris Martin and myself playing 3 nights at the Boston Garden, and it went so well. Peter Wolf asked us to join them for the rest of the 70 city tour.
Wow. So prior to this, what were you guys doing? I mean, were you playing the Rat? Were you playing the Paradise? What was the Axis band doing?
Yes, and yes.
Okay.
The Rat, the Paradise, every venue between here and Maine, between here and Rhode Island and Connecticut, between here and Western Mass, you name it. We played everywhere.
So you were, you just paying your dues, playing, no record deal or anything like that. You're banging out clubs. Do you have any like great stories about playing the Rat or the Paradise or anything that you remember that's like really? I
don't know. A great story?
How about a good one?
Well,
I should have Johnny A coach you.
All right, I'll tell you what. I was playing at a place in the western part of the state called the Mohawk Club.
Okay.
Now, when you play at the Mohawk Club, the stage is where a stage would be, and then in back there's dressing rooms. So during the show, Derek would do a drum solo. I would take that opportunity to leave the stage, towel off, change my shirt, maybe, dripping wet, change my shirt and go back on. So I did that. And I went into the dressing room, and there was a woman in there who was trying to steal my pants by stuffing herself into them. Literally, I caught her putting my clothes on. Then she was going to put her clothes on over mine and presumably walk out. So I walked in and I said, what are you doing? And she said, humana, 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 humana. And then I said, please take my pants off. She took my pants off. And finally somebody came back and looked at me and said, what is she doing? Like I had her taking her clothes off, but it was just, she was trying to steal my clothes. So is that a great story? I don't know.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
But it happened.
It's crazy. So is this when you're starting to form your material, the basis for your first album? Are you writing original tunes?
Absolutely,
are you playing Johanna Wild tunes too? Because I meant to ask you now, were you one of the writers in Johanna Wild too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I was the primary writer in both bands.
Okay.
With Jeff Linscott and Johanna Wild. And then when Axis formed, I was pretty much writing them either alone or with Chris Martin.
Okay. So even before you get the Giles gig, do you guys have a demo? When do you start showing up on BCN? Because that's when I first became familiar.
Yeah,
with you. We had this conversation about how much I loved your demos, and then we could talk about the record after.
Yeah, we recorded a song called "Life Takes a Life."
Yep.
Which was originally a demo that me and Chris did on our own, and it sounded great. It was great.
That's brilliant.
And we sent it to Max Satori at WBCN, and she loved it. And boom, we're back on the radio. Not bad for a band who never had a record deal, right? And when I say radio, I don't mean a courtesy play. I mean in rotation.
Oh no, heavy rotation. I love that song.
We were in charge of the demos. Chris Martin and I went into the studio. We were in charge. When we got signed to a major label, they were in charge. And they assigned a producer to us who had his own vision about how the record should sound, which didn't match our vision. It's really no more complicated than that. So that and Ocean in Motion.
Yep.
Were two of our early songs that we got traction on before we got a record deal.
Put this charm around you. Like the sea, I will surround you. Is this an obsession? If so, I'll try to make corrections. Now wait a minute. Can you hear me if I try? Can you hear me if I try? Oh, I'm in ocean. Where? In motion. Come on. I'm in ocean. I'm in motion. I'm in ocean.
Here's what happened. We did the Giles tour for 70 cities. And came back, and we were headlining here everywhere, the Channel,
yep,
and every other place. And then we got record deal offers. But it took us coming back from the Giles tour to make that happen.
Okay. So when you do get the record deal, it's with Polygram, and I forget who the producer was, but I know we worked with a lot of people.
Pat Moran.
Pat Moran. And
yeah, he was an English guy that did Robert Plant's solo record.
Yeah.
And I heard Robert Plant's solo record, and I thought, damn, that sounds great. If we have to have a producer, and we did, Polygram told us so.
Yep.
We originally lobbied to go in like we'd always done and let us do it. But now we're in the big leagues. We're in the majors, right? So we don't get to call those shots anymore. And of course, we made our first two records with Pat Moran, and God bless him. He's no longer alive. He was a great guy, but he had no business producing us. None.
Yep.
I didn't know that then. I felt like, you know what? I would listen to the rough takes at the end of a day, right?
Yep.
And I said to Chris, geez, this sounds kind of small and not very exciting. And back in those days, there was an expression, fix it in the mix.
Mm.
So I just assumed, well, what do I know? Maybe it gets fixed in the mix. Well, it doesn't. If it's not great from the get-go, it's going to be tough for it to ever be great. So, you know, we were in a position where we couldn't produce our first two records, and we had to have a producer. And that's how we ended up working with Pat Moran.
Well, I met you last spring at like a music expo, and we were talking, and my experience was that I was a fan of you guys based on your demos. Life Takes a Life, which on the record still does sound
good.
That
Yeah.
sounds great. You sent me the master the other day, and it was great. And then but I remember listening to Ocean in Motion, and then there was another song that was in there. Maybe it was like Real Man or something like that. What the hell's the name
Takes
of
a
it?
New Man.
It did, yep. And I'm there like, where's the fucking oomph? Where's the this? It's just like, what the hell happened to these records? And I'm there like,
imagine me then.
yo, yeah, oh God,
yeah. And my heart is broken. My heart is broken because I thought, you know, like all new bands, this is our first and only shot.
Yep.
And you know, what can I do? You know, now it's history. But at the time, it was heartbreaking for me, heartbreaking for Chris too. And there was literally nothing we could do about it.
Yep.
We knew what the band sounded like live.
Yep.
Our fans knew what the band sounded like live.
Yep.
Everybody knew what the band sounded like live,
yep.
Including the record company who signed us. They signed us based on us tearing it up at a live gig. That's how we got the deal.
Yep.
But a producer came in and changed it.
I would say the same thing happened with DMZ. The same thing happened with the Nervous Eaters. All bands that I had seen multiple times live, and then I got the record, and I just said, Jesus, I was looking at your catalog the other day, and I go, oh, that's right, I had that record, because I bought the record and think to myself, like, you know, Ocean Motion and New Man were just like not what I was used to.
Our first record should have had the impact of Van Halen's first record.
Yep.
Now, Eddie was lucky. He hooked up with a Ted Templeman who understood one thing: get out of the way. Van Halen was playing just like we were, except on the West Coast locally. And they played every venue and was selling them out. And they had a thing, and everybody knew it. And when they got signed to Warner Brothers, Ted Templeman came in and said, I am not going to mess with this. I'm not going to change a thing that's already working, right?
Yep.
I wish we'd had that luck. It was just the luck of the draw, man, that we didn't get Ted Templeman and not Pat Moran.
Yep. And it's such, I mean, but then you just get to see what the potential negative side effects, even though I enjoy the Thunder Train record, that they just did it like one take and they blasted them out. And there's a lot of great energy, but it's not like the record that they would make if they had like you said, a Ted Templeton or someone like that. But
No.
but they also didn't get the life sucked out of them like you guys did, I think, in that record, unfortunately.
You know what? I realize now there's a really interesting dichotomy. Back in those days, there were record labels, and all of us aspired to be on one of them. All of us did. We all aspired that you've made it when you're signed to Polydor or Warner Brothers or whomever. Now, there aren't any record labels really that are signing bands. Oh, sure. Somebody like Jay-Z has a record label, but he's a billionaire and multi-platinum and is not worried about selling tickets.
Yeah.
Now, what new bands do is they produce themselves, just like I wanted to do. They released their own records, just like I wanted to do. And you can find international distribution to get it around the world, just like I wanted to do.
Yep.
So in some ways, bands who are happening now have an easier shot at finding an audience. That's what I'm talking about, finding an audience. Finding your core audience is better now because you aren't restricted by what the rules were then.
Yep. But the good news about that record is that it also got you on MTV, and you were in pretty good rotation with Life Takes a Life.
Yeah, that did happen, no doubt.
Yep. And then you stayed. So the two records you did with Polydor, and then with the then you get signed to 3 records. You did 3 records with Capitol. And I was looking, and you were even in like 1987. I forget which record it was. Well, Holy War, that was like 1987. I think. So you stayed,
Yeah,
maintained a presence on MTV for a long time.
I know. It's a miracle. As I think back on those days, it's miraculous that I somehow managed to stay. Like you said, instead of, some of the one song wonders that came and went and you never heard from them again. I think a lot of that is luck. Be completely honest with you. A lot of it is luck. Most of it is timing, and a very small percentage is talent. Because if you don't have the first two, no one ever gets to find out if you have any talent or not.
Yeah, but here's the thing. You're also nominated for a Grammy for the best instrumental for Ritual with the Axis, and I forget what album that was on.
That was on the first record. The Ritual was on the first one.
Okay, it was on the first. Okay, so that was early on, and then the other thing I mean I would push back on the idea that it was mostly luck. I mean, there's an awful lot of talent, and I wrote a note to myself last night when I was going through different songs on the catalog, and one is like, for instance, Holy War, from the '87 album Wishes, and there's some real depth to the writing. Even Life Takes a Life. Holy War. I mean, you had some rock and roll party stuff too. I saw an '87 video from MTV that was like, well produced, a lot of dancing, really a couple of beautiful women in there, and
I'm sorry.
And it was like that looked more like regular MTV type stuff. Yeah. And I think you might have had Jerry Curl in your hair at that point too.
I don't know. I listen, I'll tell you this. One of the things that now that I realize it now, that one of the things that gave the Axis a little bit of an edge is we were throwing elbows. Life Takes a Life is a song about gun violence. Yep. Period. Full stop. Yep. And the video was about gun violence.
That's a good video. That's a good video.
My point is that one and Holy War was, I was talking about religious freedom and talking about the Reverend Falwell and the Ayatollah Khomeini. And those things, I think, gave people an awareness that there was something more than just party all night and party every day.
Yep.
There was more to it. And I think that came through in the music from the first record. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining about the way the first two albums sound, because the truth of the matter is we got a lot of airplay, and we also got a lot of interest from rock journalists everywhere. I've made connections then that I still have in Europe and Japan, because people remember the impact of Life Takes a Life in a sea of I want to party all night and rock every day.
Yep.
This said something else.
And that's what I thought when I think of Johanna Wild. I think of a really good, solid party band. It's about women and rock and roll and fun. And then when you go to Axis, and like the first thing out of the box is Life Takes a Life, which is a very serious and a great song. It's going to be stuck in my head all week now. And then like Holy War. And it's like, those are statement songs. Those aren't just, dippy,
No.
It's not Van Halen. I mean, I like Van Halen too, but they didn't do anything that was particularly serious. And that was, like I said, the depth of the songwriting is something that you really can't underestimate.
It gave us a platform from which to grow. One of the bands that I really admired back in those days was the Police.
Yep.
I really liked them a lot, and I love Sting.
Yep. Because
the stuff was easy, accessible, and danceable, but he was saying things.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It wasn't about the party. It was about the world he lived in. And that appealed to me. It still does. In my writing now, it is still what appeals to me. It's a way for me to express my feelings about the world I live in.
Yep. So I found the thing that I was researching last night. It was called Don't Say Goodnight. It was an MTV hit. It's got a kind of like a 38 special feel to it, big production values. Yeah. But that's the antithesis of what we were just talking about with the important writing.
We filmed that on an airstrip in Walpole at like 3 a.m.
Really?
The directors found this airstrip. And so we set up a giant house facade that was on a crane.
Yep.
And at the end of the video, the house lifts up and it's supposed to be us there playing on stage. Well, imagine seeing all that.
That was Capitol record money too, though, right? You did two with Polydor and then three
Yeah.
with Capitol. Yep.
Yeah.
How was your Capitol experience recording and distribution and all
It
that?
was fantastic. I was able to, Capitol saw me as an artist and not just as a flavor.
Yep.
So I got a lot of leeway there. I got a leeway to make the Wishes record. I got leeway to write the lyrics I wanted to write, and more importantly, I was able to produce myself. There's a guy on those records by the name of Spencer Proffer. He owned the studio that I recorded at, but it was me controlling the process, and that felt like freedom. I loved it.
Yep.
And I loved recording at Capitol Studio A, where Ray Charles was, and every Frank Sinatra was there,
Wow.
and there I was where those people were, and so I really enjoyed my Capitol Records experience.
So during this, it's a pretty long run. I think what it was 82, I think was the original album, and then 87, I think was the last.
Yeah,
87 or 80, 89 maybe. So that's
89, I think. Yeah.
That's a pretty long run.
Mm.
5 albums in a decade, and is a lot of touring. Were you like headlining a lot, or were you?
Oh my goodness, we played with everybody. We did tours with Rush. We did tours with, I wouldn't even know how to. Deep Purple. I mean, we toured with everybody. But the most fun tour I ever did was with a band called Def Leppard.
Oh, God, yeah.
That we did the Pyromania tour, and it was crazy because the girls were attracted to all those guys.
Yeah.
I mean, I never saw anything like that. We pull into a city, and before we got to the hotel, after driving all night, there'd be a sea of people surrounding the hotel. And I'm looking around to see who's here. Well, it was us. The kids don't know who's on the buses.
Yep.
So I'd get off the bus. Yeah, it was, and the shows were off the hook, and we became friends with the guys in the band, and we would hang out and jam with each other on stage. It was probably the most fun tour that Axis did.
That's when they're in their heyday. Pyromania.
Yeah.
That was like I'm pretty sure that was their biggest album.
Between them and the Giles band, those were my most fun national and international tours with guys that we not only appreciated the music that they were doing, but we got along as friends.
So one of the things that I like to ask too, it's like some of the songs that you're especially proud of that weren't like necessarily MTV hits or weren't as well known, but what do you consider like some of your creative highs? I'd like to, if you were putting your best, the things that you're like most proud of that you did that aren't necessarily.
I did 2 records for a label, the Shrapnel label, and they were quote unquote my blues records, so to speak, because at that time, Shrapnel, aka Blues Bureau, was that's what they were into, and so they signed me to make a couple of blues records when they weren't blues really, they were blues filtered through me. Yep. So there was a lot of rock element to it, and those records still stand up. Both of them still sound good. They still sound like me. I'm proud of all the songs, and they're let's see. One album was called Electric Factory. I really like that record, and I can still listen to them. They still sound like they were recorded. I recorded them all, and I produced them all, and I'm proud of them all. And I think my most fun experience in making a record with something that wasn't all mine was Barefoot Servants.
Yep.
I was in a band with Lee Sklar, the bass player, who plays with Phil Collin. And that band, we toured and we did 2 records. And I would say to anybody listening to this, seek out Barefoot Servants. And if you hear that and you don't like it, I'll buy the record from you. That's how good I think it is. And that's how well it was received. Both of those Barefoot Servants record are killer. Very proud of them.
Yeah, jump back, gasoline, keep your motor engine clean, fly down in the sand, back to where it all began. Buy this, sell that, wrap it in a paper sack, and leave it at the Salvation Army. Yeah, take me to the station. Yeah, take me to the station. Oh, you know I'm out for glory. Yeah. In the daylight hours, I saw the seeds in every town, where voices spread the message. Oh, Pharaoh's house is burning down.
Let's talk about so how did the Axis end up like splintering? I know you had a couple albums. You had 4 albums, right?
Yeah. By the time I went to Capitol, the band had more or less dissolved. That is to say, the touring band that was myself and Chris Martin and Derek Blevins. And dude, it's such a familiar story. We spent hundreds of hours in close proximity.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens when you're on a tour bus.
Yeah.
So unless a band, this is my opinion. I think if a band becomes like Aerosmith, which is an ongoing money-making enterprise, that's a reason that often bands stay together, because it becomes their livelihood. With us, we never had that kind of commercial success. So we fell prey to what most bands do, which is going their separate ways after you sort of, you send the rocket up initially and there's fireworks, and then it's hard to match that. And oftentimes bands dissolve for that reason.
Yeah. I mean, you guys did have a pretty significant level of success, at least from an outsider standpoint.
Oh, no, we did. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not knocking it. Believe me,
Yeah.
It put me on the map. The success with Axis established my ability to make a living from music. No question about it. But not enough to become, again, like Rush or Aerosmith or the Rolling Stones, an ongoing money-making enterprise. Axis was never that. Yeah.
So along those lines, I'm pretty sure we did not talk about this in the previous interview, so you started to morph. I mean, you've done a ton of things outside of, you've made your living in music your entire life, in music or creative arts your whole entire life, right?
Yeah.
That's what Sal was talking about too. He said he's great. He's never had to have a job. I mean, even though I know it's a job, but then you branched into other things. So let's talk about when the Axis did break up, where you went, and then some of the other things that you do. Because I know you've been involved in like film scoring.
Yeah. Well, what happened was when the band dissolved, I think it was after the In Excess tour, we were exhausted and we took a break. And what I did is I went to Southern California just to see what the hubbub was. I knew some people there and I decided to just check it out, not thinking much of it. And as soon as I got there, I fell into music, television and movie music from a producer, Spencer Proffer. He introduced me to Fox Television, which was not the Fox we know now.
Yeah, thankfully.
Yeah, and so I think my first big gig was doing a video with Homer and Bart Simpson for the yeah, it's crazy.
Really?
You probably find it online. Yeah, it's called Party on Fox Tonight, and I'm featured in it. And that was a big gig for me. I was all of a sudden.
You were featured as an actual character.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
And I shared the screen with Homer and Bart, so that was great. I thought
that's fantastic.
Really yeah, and that was sort of the beginning of all that.
Gonna have a party. Gonna raise the roof. Yeah, go tell everybody. Gonna watch Fox tonight. Well, the boys are swinging and the girls are cool. All the sports are smoking and the shows are too. Yeah, we got the whole world jamming. Gonna watch Fox tonight. All right. There's no time required. The good times are gonna be on Fox. There's only one rule, strictly hell. Everybody's got love to rock. Throw that remote out the window. Take the rug off the floor. They can hear you cheering from the house next door. Yeah, 'cause everyone's invited. Gonna watch Fox tonight. Yeah, have a super season. Gonna watch Fox tonight. All right.
So what's the then that kind of whet your appetite for the other things?
Well,
you-
one thing led to another. I had planned to go out for a visit for a week, and I ended up staying for 22 years. And the reason, yeah, I know, and the reason why was that the music business that I had morphed into providing commercial music, which I enjoyed very much.
Yeah.
I still got to make a record now and again. I believe when I was in California, that's when I did the 2 Blues Bureau records for the Blues Bureau label. And so I was making a lot of money, and I bought a house and did all that stuff that you do. And before I looked up and 20 years had gone by.
So let's talk. So let's give the audience a little more. So you did, after you did the Simpson thing, which is like right out of the box, a huge hit. But didn't you do stuff for like HBO? I have my notes before, but we've had a gap between interviews. So it's not fresh on my-
Before the HBO opportunity, I did music for Star Trek and a bunch of shows for ABC and all kinds of commercial stuff. I also did. I did a commercial for what's that picante sauce? New York City. There was a commercial a few years ago, and I was a cowboy, and so I was doing all this stuff.
You were in the commercial as well.
Yeah, I was in it also, and created the music.
Oh, that's fun.
So I was getting paid twice, and and rubbing shoulders with this one and that one, and again, for me to repeat it, I've forgotten all about the timeline, but things just went from one to another.
But you never stopped making music.
No, never. There's 2 albums that I did for the Blues Bureau label.
Yeah.
One is called Positively the Blues, and the other is called Electric Factory. And I'm telling you, you can drop the needle anywhere on those records, and I'm really proud of it. It's really guitar rock and guitar blues, and I at that time I'd begin to figure out how to sing, and I'm really proud of those records, Electric Factory and Positively the Blues. In fact, the title track, Electric Factory, is an instrumental, and you should play it. It's really cool.
It's interesting that you just said so. That's when you learned to when you were beginning to learn how to sing.
Yeah.
And I was thinking to myself, like, I mean, I showed my girlfriend an MTV video from you a couple days ago. I said, "Yeah, this is a guy I'm going to be interviewing." When we did, Life Takes a Life, obviously, and
Yeah.
saying, "Wow, what a great singer!" And so, do you mean learning
I
how
hated
how
my
to
dude. I hated my voice. Hated
really?
it. Hated. Yes. To me, I just didn't dig where I was coming from, and I hadn't. You know what? When we first started making records, Axis, I was figuring myself out. I was figuring out how I wanted to be and how I saw myself. So my singing has come along, in my opinion, a long ways from those early records to say my starting with my solo records, Wishes and Barefoot Servants and all that stuff. I'd figured out how my voice should sound. And if you put them back to back, you can hear the difference.
A six-pack hijack, wheels are coming off the track. DNA, silicone, cut it to the bone. Wiretap government, pay the tax, pay the rent. It's enough to make you crazy. In the early hours, I'm in the dust, it's on the ground. Speaking in many voices, on Pharaoh's house is burning down.
You sang with Joanna Wild too, right?
Yeah.
So that was more just regular rock and roll singing. Then there's by the time you got to the Axis, particularly say Life Takes a Life, just being a good example. It's I mean, it sounds like a pretty polished voice to me. But did you mean when you found your voice, you mean like a blues voice, or do you mean just in general?
I think I just figured out how to use it.
Yeah.
I don't want to give you the wrong idea. I did the best I could on those Axis songs in terms of singing them, but I couldn't really listen. I didn't enjoy listening to me singing. I just didn't, and that didn't happen until maybe the Wishes record.
So after you moved back from California, how long ago was that?
I left California in 2029, the end of 2009.
Okay.
2010, and I for several reasons, I had overstayed my welcome in California. I'd had enough, and moved back to New England, and instantly fell at home, fell in love with it all over again. Of course, Boston looked completely different. I didn't hardly recognize the skyline.
Yeah.
And all the venues that I played back in the day, all gone.
Yeah.
The Channel, the Paradise, it's called something different now.
Yeah.
When I played there, it was the Paradise Theater and all of the places, Bunratty's, Uncle Sam's, I could go on and on. All of those great venues that I had cut my teeth on were gone. They were closed. So it was sort of another time of reinvention for me. I started working with Charlie Farron, and we did a record together called Fahrenheit.
Yep.
Or FBI, I'm sorry, Farron Butcher Incorporated. Okay. And that was a great record. That was Charlie is a tremendous singer. He's just great. There are very few that have the kind of power and articulateness that Charlie has as a singer. I think he's one of the best I've ever heard. And we did a record together, FBI, and that was pretty much right after I got back to New England. was rock with some acoustic blues, because
Oh,
by
okay.
that time I was feeling that, you know, that I realized that was where I lived. You know, all of my recording, I think, led me to that record with Charlie Farron, FBI. And of course, after that, it was just, you know, all of a sudden I was working again and playing out and all that stuff.
So you all the while you're still maintaining your ties with the you still do commercial like
Oh
phone
yeah, yeah,
stuff?
that never stopped. That's I know that any musicians watching this will appreciate that I call that mailbox money,
Yep.
because it's the gift that keeps on giving. Every year, every quarter, I get royalty checks, and I can't say it's a bad thing. You know, for a working guy like me, it's nice to have that as part of my portfolio.
Yeah, I have friends that are actors, and they'll be getting a check. A friend of mine did a Baybank commercial a while ago, and he said, 2 years later during the Red Sox games, when the Red Sox were playing, he'd get checks in the mail all the time. He said, "This is
There
great."
was a TV show, I think in the '90s, called The Hughleys, starring
Oh,
D.L.
yeah,
Hughley.
yeah.
And I wrote the theme song for that TV show. And I'm still getting checks for that show today.
Wow.
I can't believe it.
From
It
like TV
plays,
Land or something like
yeah,
that,
it
right?
plays somewhere in the world. If it's not here, it's Sweden. If it's not Sweden, it's the UK. If it's not
Oh,
there, it's Zimbabwe. That show has really, really been very good to me.
oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
This time is the right time. I'll be yours and you'll be mine. I'm back on top again. Climbing every mountain, you best not be counting me out. I'm back on top again. Back on top, back on top. This time is the right time. I'll be yours and you'll be mine. I'm back on top again. This is the right time.
So after you did the album with Charlie Fahrenheit, Charlie Farron, you've been making music, the whole time that you've been back. So what are some of the other projects that you did?
Well, I mean, of course, after that, I did an album called Two Roads East, which is still out there and can be heard. I'm very proud of that. I did an album called 360 Degrees back in 2019. And that's what I do, man. I mean, I was talking to a buddy of mine, and we both came to the conclusion that, of course, I'm still making music. What else am I going to do?
Yep.
You know, I'm not a librarian, and I'm not a physicist.
Yep.
So there it is: librarian, physicist, guitar player.
So right now you're let's talk about what we talked before we started recording. So you're doing a gig. You perform with Sal Baglio and Alan Estes. Want to talk about that project a little?
Sure. I did a record with my two buddies, Sal Baglio and Alan Estes, called Butcher, Baglio, and Estes. The record is called Gypsy Caravan, and it's some of the best work I've ever done. If you don't have it, let me know and I'll send you a copy. It's full of great singing, a lot of harmony, a lot of guitar work, and some great songs.
So Sal, just for the people that don't know, Sal's with the Stompers and Alan Estes with the Estes Boys for like
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
70s or something, right?
yeah. We've been friends for forever, you know, and we would do this show every year, this holiday show, at the Shell and Lou Performance Center. And it was all, successful, and a lot of people, we got a lot of love from that. And after one performance last year, in fact, we said, we should take this into the studio, and we did. And so the record is Gypsy Caravan, and I'm very proud of it.
What's that? What's the sound?
I don't know. It's what do you get when you have three veteran songwriters and singers and pickers? You shake it up, and it's an amalgam of all of the years we spent doing what we do. So there's a little of this and a little of that, and some electric guitar playing and some acoustic stuff. I don't know. In a lot of ways, it's like Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Three very different guys.
Yeah, who write together and make a thing that's different than the separate parts.
Clear the cobwebs, sweep the dust. Tonight we're feeling marvelous. Hey, tell me, boys, who has more fun than us? Call us fast, furious, just don't take us serious. And tell me, boys, who has more fun than us? Hurry, mama, don't be late. Brother John can hardly wait to kick those blues under the bus. Who has more fun than us? Yeah.
What would be a good representative cut? What's your favorite cut on the album?
Boy, that's a tough one. I think my favorite song, my favorite three songs on that record are Long Player. That's the first song on the record.
Well, now sit down to a platter, chuck berry on chess. Listen to the grooves, through the static and hiss. I'll tell you something, youngin', you ain't heard nothing like this. And the world keeps spinning around. After school special on new jukebox hits. When I put the needle down, it sure stands the test. Long player. Long player.
Another one called Still Running, which kind of summed up the three of us. After all these years, that's what we're doing. We're still running and doing what we do.
Mother, talk to me. There's a ringing in my ears. I just want to be near you, but I can't hear you. I'm broke down, almost beyond repair. Ain't it funny how the times change when the good things still remain? You can't keep a good man down. And I'm still running, oh yeah, still running.
And I guess my third favorite would be Railroad Line. It's something that I've been doing live in my shows for a lot of years. It's acoustic blues, Delta, and I dig it.
Oh, railroad line, oh, railroad line. I've been at the station for all this time. I've got a ticket to Georgia by railroad line.
One other thing that I really meant to, when I had Sal on the show, it's like I had Sal and I talked after the recording, and I said to him, I said, geez, I wish I had talked more about like stories that you'd like to tell from your career that were funny, interesting, insane, anything. And I probably should have prepped you before I.
You probably should have, yeah. Because, when you're in your own life,
Yeah.
it's hard to choose little anecdotes and
Yep.
points of reference, because for me, it's been a straight line. It's not like, well, this happened a few years ago, then nothing happened.
Yeah.
And then last month something happened, then nothing. It's not like that. It's my life is a continuum. I will say this though. One of my crowning achievements is playing at Fenway Park in Boston. I did the national anthem twice at Fenway in Boston, and wowzer, you know, playing in front of that many people, 42,000 at once, and hearing, you can find that on YouTube, Jon Butcher Fenway Park. You'll see what I mean. It's an experience that's hard to replicate.
So did you singing it, or did you do the Hendrix style thing?
Hendrix style.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, I definitely got to pull that.
Oh yeah, it's fun. And everybody dug it, and it got, I don't know how many plays at YouTube, and it's playing there, in particular there, was really meaningful for so many reasons. I started in Boston. That's where my career started. And so walking out on the infield at Fenway is a wowzer.
Oh, God, yeah. All right, Jon. I really appreciate you coming on. This has been great.
Thank you very much
for better for the second one. And then we'll
thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Yeah, it's great talking to you. It really was. You're a good guy to talk to. I mean, the other thing I've noticed, like when I'm guys that have been around for a long time, Sal and JJ from DMZ and some other, what people have is, when they're older, I think, is a degree of humility and like perspective, and it makes these interviews a lot more fun than just.
Man, it's true. The one thing that I can honestly say is, the more years I've been playing, the more humble I've become, because because you understand that so much of this business is timing and where you are and what you're doing when, in front of whom.
Yeah.
And none of that has been in my control ever.
Yeah.
It never has been. Check this out. When I was living in California, I fell in with cowboy reenactors. Do you know what that is?
No.
If you see a commercial and there's cowboys, it's on a ranch, or somebody's riding a horse and yeehaw and all that stuff. Well, there's a group that Hollywood hires of cowboy reenactors who do these types of things. They take the unit, they already have the proper accoutrement and the proper boots and the proper clothing and know how to ride horses. Well, I did all that. So I fell in with these guys by accident. Just some guy I met named Peter Chireko said, "Hey, you want to join our group?" And I said, "I don't know." It says, "Well, we're doing a Heinz commercial and be at this ranch at 6 a.m. Well, I was there and I have the pictures to prove it. And I did that for a number of years when I was living in Cali, and that was a lot of fun. It really was.
Okay, John, great talking to you again. Hope to see you on the circuit soon. I
All
wish I
right,
was
brother.
around
Thank
this
you.
weekend.
Thank you very
Uh,
much.
All right, thanks, man.
Take
So
care
long.
now. All right.
Thanks for listening to Rat Tales, Boston Rock Stories. Rat Tales is produced and directed by Lenny, Scolletta, and Mike Hoban, with a huge thanks to Medford Community Media in beautiful downtown Medford, Massachusetts.